Hey everybody, I am Talkative Carl back again for another movie spoiler review. I just wrapped up my spoiler review on the first Ant-Man movie. Want to cover the first two Ant-Man movies considering I already covered Ant-Man Quantumania. So I want to make sure I complete the trilogy. I felt compelled to do so. Before we get into it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe to this channel. Follow me on links in the description below, especially my Patreon, where you can put in certain requests on, pick a tier list, and therefore you can go ahead and if you have like a particular request for a comic, movie, TV show, or just a general topic, you got some affordable tier lists you can choose from, and I'll definitely give you a shout out. Patreon members get first viewing, all that stuff. Anyway, I forgot to do this in my previous review of the first Ant-Man movie. Go over the casting. I want to do this now. Of course, you got Paul Rudd as Scott Lang, Evangeline Lilly as Hope Van Dyne, Corey Stoll as Darren Cross / Yellow Jacket, Bobby Cannavale as Jim Paxton, Michael Pena as Luis, T.I. as Dave, Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, Wood Harris as Gail, Judy Greer as Maggie, Abby Ryder Fortson as Cassie Lang, Little Cassie Lang, or is Ishi, or crap, what's that full thing on YouTube? It's called How It Should Have Ended. Just recently made fun of the old adult Cassie, like recasty because they keep recasting that freaking character. Michael Douglas as Hank Pym. Yeah, so now for the sequel, we got Walton Goggins as Sonny Birch. Hannah John Common as Ava Star / Ghost. Randall Park as Jimmy Woo. Abby Ryder Fortson reprises the roles. I thought it was like a different character. People keep recasting this kid. Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet Van Dyne, Lawrence Fishburne as Bill Foster. So anyway, this is set in the early phase 3 era, after the events of Civil War, when Sam Wilson brought in Scott Lang to add an extra guy on their side, because the Soviet Accords got Cap's side and Tony Stark's side, who wanted to sign and who didn't want to sign. And so after those events, Scott was first arrested, then eventually put on house arrest. So he only had 3 days left. So things are good between Scott and his ex-wife, and even the new husband, and things between him and his daughter are even better than ever. And they start, him and his buddy starting like a new company where they can provide people with security, with security cameras and all that other stuff, trying to get that off the ground. But his relationship between Hank and Hope are strained, considering that he just ran off with Captain America with his Ant-Man suit, which he wanted to keep quiet, because now that Tony Stark especially knows, then it's like, because Hank has like a grudge against the Stark family in general. So now they kind of like I won't say I mean, they're in their feelings, but I think they had like a kind of like a bit of a right to, but it's kind of like zero understanding, somewhat, the fact that, you know, as he put out, like, Captain America asked for his help. It's like if Captain America asked for your help, you're down. I mean, come on, especially how convincing Captain America can be. That's like, why would you turn Captain America down? If he needs your help with something and you are able to, offer any help to Captain America, you take it. And y'all sitting again butthurt about it. I'm just like, there's no level of understanding. I think that is probably like one of my personal, I'm not sure about anybody else, but that's my personal thing I had against the film. It's like, wow, like it took like at least a middle, almost towards the second act before they start coming around on God. I mean, like, I would have just like, after maybe, a few minutes of Scott explaining the first act, when they're coming back together, they, it's like, okay, I get it. I just kind of wish you would have just called us and just, make it fast. Don't drag it out. It's like, you don't need to be angry that long for something that's very excusable. It's not like he took the thing joyriding to pick up chicks, and that's how they make it sound like when again this level of angry. It's like, you get mad at your teenager, taking your car out for a joyride, to hook up. It's not the same thing, and y'all treating it like it's the same thing. So Scott is starting getting these kind of weird dreams of this woman that turns out to be Janet sending signals, because after the last film where he shrunk down to the quantum realm temporarily, he managed to get like mind and quantum entangled with Janet, to where now she's leaving messages. He tells Hank and Hope, which leads them to tell him about the quantum tunnel they're inventing, so that way they can actually travel properly through the quantum realm to get Janet out. But they needed this particular part, which Hope and Hank set up this kind of buy between them and Sonny Birch. Of course, they're going under a different alias because Hank and Janet are on the run now, because since they saw the Ant-Man suit, people saw the Ant-Man suit. Now it's like, okay, they know who invented it. Now they're like, they broke some kind of Sokovia Accords, which, if you watch Legal Eagle on YouTube, he had like it was a lawyer who reviewed like the Civil War movie and the Sokovia Accords and things like that. He brought up how super illegal it would be if you're essentially kind of like forced draft. We stopped like forcing people to draft for the army way back in like the 20s, 30s, something like that. It should be definitely like somewhere around WW2 or after WW2. I can't remember, but it's essentially similar to that, where it's like you're forcing people, like, you're forcing people who might have powers or some kind of weird gimmick to sign and essentially work for the government. Yeah, I got a hair in my tongue. Sorry about that. You're essentially forcing people, to work for the government, and they might not, because they think like, oh, the first thing you want to do is like be an untrained vigilante, and it's like, you don't know what they're gonna do. They probably don't want to do anything. They just want to live a normal life. You're essentially forcing them to do things because you are essentially, as Kat would have put it, if my memory is correct, like, you're doing this out of fear of what they might do. So you're trying to control the situation. And of course, some people argue, you need to, you know, if something goes wrong, we need to have, like, you know, standards and practices and people to be held accountable, because it would have been a whole lot worse, and they need to be properly trained. It's like, you see, because next year I will review Marvel Civil War and the comic book event, because, you know, I didn't hate the concept of the Civil War thing. I think Civil War 2 was horrible, because it felt like super forced, trying to, you know, make something. You know, it's like sometimes writers in comics want to make it's like somebody on high saying, like, you know, it's a thing now, somebody get to it, instead of just allowing, you know, a writer who just, like a movie or a TV show, if somebody wants to make a Plastic Man movie, there should be somebody like that actually has like an idea of a Plastic Man movie, not getting the hottest. It's like Marvel saying, like, or DC saying, like, hey, Ryan Coogler is hot right now. Hey, we need like a Plastic Man movie. The name is hot right now. We need a Plastic Man movie. Get Ryan Coogler on it. Ryan Coogler don't want to, you know, do Plastic Man, but you throw a bunch of money on his lap, so it's like, I'll come up with something, and it's probably gonna be, it might be good, but not as good as you might think if he actually had like a passion for it. This is how I felt about Civil War 2 comic book event, where I doubt there's not that much passion behind it, and it kind of felt forced just to make a thing. I think that comic book event came around the time of the Civil War movie, and it's trying to say, okay, you know, Civil War is hot right now, so we gotta, you know, make a comic book event. Let's do Civil War 2 and have Tony go against Carol this time, and Tony technically be on the right. They're forcing it. And as I was reading it, like, it read forced. But the first one, you know, there was something to it. You know, now, you know, there was plot holes, yes, but by and large, I thought it was a you know, okay, solid event from my recollection. It's been many years since I read it, but from my recollection, it was a pretty solid thing. But anyway, what, you know, while they're at the buy, Sonny's trying to you know, figure out who, you know, Hope actually is, and said, like, oh, you got to have my thing, otherwise, like, you know, I'll you know, it was essentially pulling like a double cross. But while Janet is, you know, taking on this guy's thugs, here comes this Marvel villain called the Ghost. Now, in other iterations of the Ghost character, if you watch my Iron Man Armored Adventures that I reviewed last year, I covered about like how, like, the Ghost is typically male. Now, most times you don't mind for like certain gender swap things if it's done properly. Like, I don't like the way they gender swap Taskmaster and kind of suck what fun he was in the comics completely out to make it as like a stoic, silent female. And it's like, God, that's not fun, and that's not Taskmaster. This one, I mean, it's fine. From little I've seen when anybody decided to use Ghost, because he's kind of like a, you know, espionage saboteur for the highest bidder. He's got like a snark to him, which you don't get it in this, which I think in this is a little bit more understandable than what they did with Taskmaster. I think what Hannah John Kamen did, you know, was pretty fine. She's pretty fine too. Hey yo. But Janet was getting overwhelmed because it's like, this person can't get touched if she doesn't want to be touched. So Ant-Man suits up, helps out, but it's like a, I won't say cobbled together suit, but after, you know, the original suit was seemingly destroyed, but, you know, Scott kind of hit it, uh there's like a regulator was kind of shorting out because it's forcing him to be small then big and small again at inappropriate times. But Ghost took off with the lab that was part of this abandoned building with the quantum tunnel and all the giant ants that's putting things together for Hank. He can like shrink it and turn it into a carry-on. Ghost took it, even though that thing should be weighing like I don't know how many pounds, considering it's still technically a building that's just been shrunk down. But he steals it. Turns out that her father was formerly an associate of Hank's that was let go because some stuff with dangerous experiments and stuff like that. He worked in secret, but there was no safeguards. Him and his wife died in an explosion, but the daughter survived. Now she has like some kind of quantum unstable molecules or something that caused her to go fading in and out, phasing in and out. And the suit kind of helps regulate that a bit, but it's also tearing her apart, which she would be only got like a couple of weeks left to live kind of situation. They having a hard time to track that thing down, but they get help. They get help from Bill Foster in the comics, Giant Man, to help locate or help fix this locator because they can't figure it out themselves. Although Bill used to be an associate also for Hank, but they haven't fallen out because Hank can be hard to work with kind of situation. And it's fun to see like Scott and Bill chewing up the scene where it's like I know you got big like on the on the news in Sokovia, and it's like I grew like 12 feet, and it's like, how big you get? I was like, oh, nothing too crazy. 65 feet. 65 feet? And then hopefully it's like getting tired. Like, if y'all done comparing sizes, can we help do this thing? So Bill gives them some information on like how to fix the thing. And Jimmy Woo was already on Scott's tail because they figured out that they don't know where. It's kind of like if I was Bill's day off. I was like, I have a feeling like Scott is like not at his house and he's supposed to be. I can't remember like how they get a win of like because they tied like his ankle monitor to a ant, like they grew, so that way they kind of convinced the ant to do certain routines to mimic Scott, so nobody will be none the wiser. I guess their original plan was doing all this stuff to get Janet out of the quantum realm. Should have been a little bit faster so they can get Scott back home, without anybody noticing. They still technically do. They pull kind of like a Ferris Bueller kind of situation, and Wu eventually goes back to his house thinking like, oh, he busted him, but no, he's home, which I don't know, should still raise suspicion considering they saw like a giant Ant-Man suit next to a building. It's like, okay, how did you get this outside? And they didn't have enough to hold him on, but still it should be raising some questions anyway. So they track down where the building is into this abandoned place where the ghost is. She's like sleeping, but she ended up waking up and bust them. All three of them are tied up and realized that Bill Foster was helping Ghost this whole time and tell them about Ghost's story. But Hank fakes like a heart attack, tries to go to these Altoid case, which Hank refused to let Scott have one, and he keeps like telling like no and slapping his hand from trying to get any. It's just telling like no, there's ants inside that will turn big once you open the case. But like I said before, he's in his feelings so doggone much. He just don't want to feel like he need to give him any kind of reason why he can't have Altoids. That part kind of dumb because you're all in your feelings. So they make their escape, get the building, and now they finishing up the tunnel situation. So Sonny and his crew track down Scott's boys, interrogates them, trying to figure out where Scott can be. But like once again, like I said in my Ant-Man review, I don't care for Luis's little long diatribe back, recalling previous events to the present day situation. I don't find that fun to me. It was one gimmick that kind of ran its course already, and I'm glad they didn't bring that back into the third film, because it's kind of like, I don't care. And people was like, he should be the one to recall everything that happened in the previous phase and blah blah. No, we do not. You do it on your own time. I know that sounds harsh, but I'm just like, I don't care for that. It's not funny. But then what did get me laughing, and I almost forgot about this particular scene, because I haven't seen like Ant-Man and the Wasp in a long while, is where like as Louise is thinking he's under true serum. Well, it actually is true serum, but the other henchman says it's not true serum. I'm like, why would you care whether it's true serum or not? It's like, it's supposed to be funny, but it's not. Anyway, he finally spills it. It's like it's in the woods, and then Ghost just pops up out of nowhere. The woods? Where in the woods? And it's like everybody's just freaking out, like, oh my god! And it's like where's And then she just leaves, and it's like, what was that? Kind of that made me laugh. It still made me laugh. That was because it's not something you expect. She just pops up. So they eventually track them down, and while they trying to do this car chase, trying to keep like the building away from Ghost and Sonny's crew, because Sonny wants to use like the quantum stuff to sell to the highest bidder kind of situation. That's why he's doing this chasing. Then it is like I mentioned in the previous film, I love the use of how they shrink and regrow certain objects. Like only in an Ant-Man film you get to see like a giant Pez dispenser being used to disrupt a car chase, or grow a salt shaker to the size of a door. It is fun, but in its giant form, because the shrinking and growing is going out of control because the regulator is kind of messed up and it still need to be fixed. He, in his giant form, chases after Sonny, who's got the building, and he goes through the water, and because he's been in giant form for too long, he starts getting dreary, and he passes out, which Wasp saves him, but Ghost regrows the building. All at the same time, Sonny gets locked up after Luis's friends tased Sonny and his crew. So they're out again. There's no need to worry about them. I don't think they was even needed in this entire film, or at least if they were, it's like they should be one and done, first act kind of background villains. I figure, like, I guess the director Peyton Reed figures like, oh, look, we got Walton Goggins. We're gonna use Walton Goggins. and they used him, but it's just like, you know, he's a fun actor, but it's like, oh my god, it's like, why this villain here? We got enough with Ghost. So they pulled like a heist switcheroo, distracting Ghost so Hank can go inside the quantum realm, pulls out Janet, and as they coming out the quantum tunnel, the ship Hank was on rams right into Ghost, knocking her aside. That was like kind of funny. But Janet used some of her quantum powers to stabilize her, giving her enough time so that way they can later find a proper cure after they go through, because any post-credit scene they go to the they send Hank to the quantum realm securely this time to collect some quantum energy so they can stabilize Ghost so she won't eventually die. And of course, like a situation with Scott, he's off house arrest and blah blah blah, and him and Janet start becoming like him and Hope start becoming like an actual item, as you see in Quantumania. But while exploring the quantum realm, on a tether, that Janet and the others can just press and reel him back in any time. Right as he's like collecting everything and he's ready to get back, and this is like leading into Avengers Infinity War, or at least running parallel to what's happening in Infinity War right now. Janet, Hank, and Hope get dusted after the snap already happened, and it's happening all across the universe. Half of life is disappearing. So now, as you know from Infinity War, Scott, or at least Endgame, Scott is gone seemingly for 5 hours, but it's because time runs, because space and time, you're outside of that when you're in the quantum realm. So 5 hours to you there would be 5 years in the regular world. So during that 5-year period, Scott was gone and he doesn't know what's going on until he gets out, thanks to this mysterious MacGuffin rat. Anyway, that's Ant-Man and the Wasp in a nutshell. Like I said, it's very middle of the road. Like, some people don't care for it at all. I find it fine. This is, the Ant-Man movies has been just like just solid okay films. I think Quantumania is like slightly above the first two, only because like I like Paul Rudd and Jonathan Majors' performances in that more so than anybody else, but only slightly. The movie's only slightly better. It's still very middle of the road. But the way I rank the Ant-Man films as a trilogy, Quantumania, first one, second one. But let me know in the comments below what you thought of Ant-Man Quantumania. I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp, the second film. Has your feelings changed over the years? Like, do you have a better appreciation for it now? But anywho, now I got that wrapped up, and I just recently wrapped up the 2-month-long Spider-Man comic reviews covering various different types of Spider-Man and women, and just wrapped up the first Spider-Verse event a few days ago. So you can go on my YouTube channel to check out all my Spider-Man covers from the TV shows, comics, and the movies. You can check them all out on my channel, because the Spider-Verse comic event is blowing up right now. So you definitely gotta check out my thoughts on the event, because it's one of my favorite events. But in the next week, moving forward in the several weeks, I'll be covering now X-Men related content, down to the TV shows, movies, and the comics. But here's the thing, I'm not just covering X-Men comics where they're as a team. First and foremost, I want to cover their individual stuff. First, I want to cover Cyclops, Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, Jubilee, Wolverine, even like Magneto and Sabretooth, Solar stuff. It's gonna be a decent amount of stuff before I cover like the team-based comics, because we're gonna be covering things like Onslaught, Days of Future Past, movie and comic, there's a couple others, but it's, by the time I wrap up X-Men stuff, comics, it'll be down to the one of my tippy top favorite comic events, House of X and Powers of X. Whereas, like, my personal opinion, the way it's like the mainstay status quo of what X-Men should be. Currently, right now, is supposed to be some kind of Fall of X storyline where everything they build is supposed to be supposedly come crashing down, which I'm not looking forward to, because I love that status quo, and they should just keep it. They should just keep it and just have other writers come add some stuff and do their own little things with it, but just keep the status quo with the Krakoa stuff and, you know, Krakoa Sex Island stuff, and them colonizing Mars and everything like that. All that stuff is like brilliant work, and it's like that should just be the mainstay. I don't want them to go back to what we had in like the 80s and 90s, because that's like, even early in their earliest exception, it's like, oh my god, you can still have people, some people hating them, but it's just like lessen that a little bit. Things gotta change a little bit here and there with the X-Men, and it's like the House of X and Powers of X was like such a good, you know, new status quo for the mutants. But we'll get into that once at the tail end of all the X-Men related content this year, because I'm pretty sure by the time I wrap up, I'll be like, I don't know, by the close to the end of summer, maybe, depending how much I can get done. Here and there, I'll cover other movies in between all that, because there's a few Mother's Day movies I want to cover in May, but since it's not that much I want to cover right now, because I really want to get through a lot of this X-Men related stuff, it should be fine. But look forward to the next TV show review is going to be the 90s X-Men cartoon, you know, covering each season. I don't remember how many seasons there were of it. It just seems like it's a lot. Not a lot of seasons, but a lot of episodes. But look forward to that, as well as the comics and movies. But I'm probably going to hold off on the movie for just slightly a bit. Maybe like at least a couple of weeks before I get to the first X-Men movie. But anyway, I will see you guys soon. Take care. Have a great evening. I'll see you guys tomorrow for some Hogwarts Legacy. I wrapped up RE4 Remake, so you can check it out on my YouTube channel as well. And yeah, don't forget to check out my various links in the description, like my Patreon. You can watch me on Twitch playing video games live. And check me out on my Twitter, where you can follow me, know what I'm doing, and when I'm live reviewing certain things. You can always stop by and ask any questions and let me know what you think, because, you know, I have a handful of you guys always popping in here and there, and, you know, give me your 2 cents, which is always cool, very cool. Thank you all, by the way, for being such loyal followers and subscribers, and, you know, giving your opinions about certain things that I'm covering, because, you know, your feedback is greatly appreciated. So anyway, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a great weekend. Take care.